Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? So I've been doing a bunch of YouTubes the past few days, maybe since Sunday, and I'm trying to focus on the SHSAT, the New York City Specialized High Schools admission test topics, and I'm just trying to go through a bunch of logistics and administration stuff. My name is Greg. I'm a tutor. I can be reached at GregsTutoringNYC at gmail.com. So the first thing to talk about today is October 18th, 2018, and it is ticket day. So you should be going on to My Schools at NYC and trying to find your ticket. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to give you guys a phone number. Okay, I just logged onto here. So what you're going to first do is go to My Schools at NYC and try to print your ticket. If you run into any problem printing your ticket, contact your guidance counselor. Problem with your ticket? Contact your guidance counselor ASAP. Okay, so hopefully they can fix something. Also, if you can print out the ticket, look at it and make sure everything is possibly correct. If there's a problem, if there is still a problem, call the NYC Department of Education Welcome Center. Their number is 718-935-2009. Okay? Only call them if necessary. Only call them for important questions. Even during normal times, you may have to wait half an hour to talk to them. So on a day like today, it's probably going to take an hour or more to speak to somebody. Hopefully they staff more people today or whatever, but that's not up to me. I'm just the messenger here. And I wish you all the best of luck trying to print the ticket. So let's talk about some other things. And if you have some problem, try to email me too. I do know a lot about the process, and I know a lot about the New York City school system, in addition to being a tutor for the subject material itself. And on that note, there's still time. Some of you are taking it on various days. Even though that today's the day you can print your ticket, there's at least 5 dates where the testing can occur. And it can occur in the morning and the afternoon too. So make sure your testing location is where you think it is. Make sure the time is where you think it is. Make sure that your child's name and student ID number are all correct. Make sure when you go to the test, they're going with their ID card and the ticket, and you have to sign the ticket. And there's also things to fill out pertaining to the prioritized order of your specialized high schools. You don't have to fill out 7 of them. I would suggest putting in more than one, though, even if there's a super top one. The selection process is not complicated, but the net effect is that it's complicated just because of the way it works. So if your cutoff score is something, you may or may not be able to get into there. On that note, let me show you last year's cutoff scores. I'm not sure this is going to work, so let's try this for a second. I believe this lets me flip the screen. Let's see, I can do it that way. No, that's not working either. Yes, it is. Okay, so this is last year's cutoff scores. I'm going to leave it here for a few seconds because you can take a photo of it on your own thing. And what I'm going to do is also put this in the comments. So I'm going to bring this back to me, put this into the comments, and then explain that a little bit. What those 3 numbers are about, and how we can make use of them. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm going to cut and paste that into this live stream. So this is the 2017 cutoff scores for the NYC specialized high schools. Okay, it's going to be as follows. It's not letting me do that. Okay, it's too big. All right, so let me do it to Bronx Science. All right, I can only put so many characters in here. Oh, that's messed up. All right, I'm going to have to do this one at a time anyway. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, that's for Stuyvesant. That's for Queens Science at York College. This is for Staten Island Tech. Okay, so if you're noticing, there's 3 numbers in each one I'm giving here. And I'll explain what they are in a second. Bronx Science. Whoops. The high school at Lehman College. High School of American Studies. So this one's not really a STEM school, even though you still have to take the minimum requirements of a New York State diploma. The Advanced Regents Diploma and the Regular Regents Diploma, depends on which one you end up. This is the High School of Math, Science, and Engineering at City College of New York. Then there's Brooklyn Tech. And finally, there's Brooklyn Latin. So hopefully I just did all these. In the meantime, I showed them all together in the beginning. So there's 3 numbers. The first number is the number of students who put that as one of their choices. So in the case of, say, the last one, because that's probably the last one on your screen, for Brooklyn Latin, 17,111 students put that down. And by the way, the list of specialized schools, the only time it's ever put down is not online, it's not on paper. It's during the test, just before the test happens, your student's going to put that down onto the paper, on their test sheet. That's the only place it goes. So please make sure you prioritize your list and that you're all clear what's going where and what's not. Okay? And this should be a family decision, not just you, not just your child, but both. And it should be a mature, and nobody should be crying. There should be a joyous, fun time. Okay? So in the event, 17,111 kids applied. The second number is the number of seats that school has available. So Brooklyn Latin has 582 seats. That's it. That's it. They only allow 582 freshmen in. Okay? In the case of, say, Brooklyn Tech, that allows 1,904 students. Okay? And the last number is the cutoff score from last year. Okay? And the cutoff score changes from year to year. But it's about the same. So if you look at all the numbers, they're all 500 and something. Okay? And some, actually, the Brooklyn Tech and the Brooklyn Latin start from 483, 493, 516, 517, 518, 519. So there's a big bunch around 517 there. Then it leaps at Queens Science to 538, and it leaps again at Stuyvesant to 559. So you also want to consider those. You want to consider the distance of the schools from your house, how early or late your child is going to get home, or how early they have to leave. How much of a hassle it's going to be during the winter, even the hot summer months. Is it going to be dark out? What kind of neighborhood do you live in? All these things are your consideration. But you also want to play with some of those numbers. Because, for instance, the cutoff score for Brooklyn Latin is 483. That implies it's easier to get to. That's not necessarily true. Because there's only 582 seats. Okay? So it depends. It depends how things are going. And it's not necessarily one school being better than the other. It's how many students are asking for the other school. If too many students are asking for the other school, the cutoff score is going to be higher because they're going to fill that seat earlier. Okay? So there's a numbers game that's happening here. That said, since Brooklyn Tech has the largest number of seats and it has a lower cutoff score, that's a strategic way to pick a school. If you're near there, of course, if you live in the Bronx, you're probably going to try to shoot for Bronx Science. So if you notice, the high school at Lehman only has 141 seats, and the high school of Math and Science and Engineering at City College of New York only has 149, compared to tenfold more at Brooklyn Tech, more than tenfold more. So there's only a finite number of seats here. So if I remember, something like 80 or 90,000 kids take this test, and only like 25,000 end up getting offered a seat. That doesn't mean they accept it. Actually, that's not right, because I'm looking at this. There's about 1,000 there, 1,800, 1,900. looks like there's about 5,000 seats available. So that's not a lot of seats compared to the number of kids taking this. So anyway, use that as part of your thing. Don't just say, I want to go to Stuyvesant, I want to go to Stuyvesant. And make sure, once you decide your number one school, make sure you're giving just as much choice to your number two and your number three school. Because if you don't get in your number one school, you're going to get in your number two or three school, hopefully. Also, you should be in unison, but independently, also picking out a non-specialized high school, okay? So whether you get into a specialized high school or not, in March, you're going to get the results of the tests. That's called round one. Also, you're going to also, by then, submit your regular non-specialized high schools, and you're going to get an acceptance letter, a round one letter, saying what high schools you got into. So you can technically get into two high schools, a specialized high school and a non-specialized high school, and then you have a choice. Furthermore, you can actually get into three because there's a specialized high school, LaGuardia, which instead of taking the SHSAT, you go for an audition. So technically, you might get into, say, Stuyvesant, LaGuardia, and the non-specialized school. So that could be in your acceptance letter too, okay? And then you have a whole bunch of choices to make, which is fabulous. That said, if you don't try out for a specialized school or you don't get into specialized school, there's many wonderful non-specialized high schools. They're just all over the place. That's one of the benefits of being a New York City resident. Okay, so there's that. So on that note, make sure you're clear of what choices you're making and why. On that note, so let's see. We have. I just spoke about some of the stuff I just said. So remember to answer all questions, even if you run out of time. That last 5 minutes, just circle anything, because they like to say not answering a question doesn't penalize you. It doesn't penalize in the sense that your score doesn't go down. The problem is it doesn't go up. So you don't want to do this test and leave any questions unanswered, even if you didn't get to them. So you're going to bring a watch with you. I mentioned this in some of my other YouTubes. You're going to bring a watch with you. That's if it's digital or a tick watch. That's all you need. It can't have any electronics. You can't bring a calculator. You can't do anything else. So you're going to bring a watch and pace yourself. By now, you should have done a bunch of practice tests, including simulations of a whole test all at once. You still have a couple days to do that, especially if your test is in November. Your test is this Saturday and Sunday. It's getting pretty tight. You should also figure out a way to figure out what your score is now. But basically, if you're getting 75 or above, your chances are good here. If you're getting under 75 or above, and actually in either case, focus on where your weaknesses are at the moment. Okay? Also focus on getting a top score on one section or the other, because that's a strategic advantage as well. The test is not, there's 114 questions, it's split up into 57 questions each. 57 math and 57 ELA questions. Okay? They're graded independently and they're added together to make a composite score. So the fact that they're graded independently is to your benefit, because there's a curve in the test, and the curve gets placed on the math, and independently there's another curve that gets placed on the English. So if you can get a higher score on one side, it's going to bring up your score higher. Basically what it means is, really on either test, the first few questions you answer are going to be higher points, and then as you take all the middle questions, and it can be in any order. It doesn't mean question 10 to 30. It just means the 10th through the 30th question you answer is going to be worth just a couple points. Okay? Because there's something called the raw score, which means every question gets 1 point, and then there's the scaled score. It's the scaled score you really want to get at here. It's often said each question's worth 1 point. It's not true. Each question's not worth 1 point, because once this curve gets thrown onto it, it's no longer worth a point. So let's work with the reality here. So what happens is, basically once you get past question number 40, the questions start returning to being worth more points. And really, if you can answer all 57 questions, really the last question's worth about 20 or 30 points. Whereas if you answer 25 questions, they may have only worth 4 points each. So what happens is, if you can answer questions correctly now, not just not just circling the bubble. If you can answer more than 40 questions correctly, the curve goes up much higher for you. So that's to your benefit. So if you can consistently and repeatedly get 40 questions right in one section, then you might want to work hard to find out which of the questions you keep getting wrong that you want to focus your energy on to do that, as well as either section the ones you're weak at too, because at the end of the day, a point is a point, no matter where it comes from. So if it influences that curve, it's cool. So, but that's an important strategic advantage. So in other words, if you can get like 85 on both of them, if you do 85% of both of them, that's great. But it's not as good as getting 95 on one and say 70 on the other. That's actually a worse score than getting 85 on both of them, just because of that curve. So this is part of working with the system and figuring out how to do things. If that's the way it's set up, you might as well go for that. Okay, so summary here: get your ticket, make sure it's right. I gave the phone number earlier. Understand how cutoff scores work. Really, what you're shooting for is 75 or above in each section, 75% and above, to at least be at the bottom of where the cutoff scores are. In each year, the cutoff scores change because of the number of students taking the test and the number of seats available, and however hard or not the test is. And it's done round robin based on the top score, as well as your top choices, and seats get filled and filled and filled until it gets that last seat, and then they determine all the cutoff scores. This is not a pass-fail test. Stuyvesant doesn't say you have to get 95% or above. It doesn't work that way. This is not that kind of a test. It's top choice, top scorer, and top choice, and it just keeps round robbing those until the seats fill up, and then it's the end of the process. Okay. There's no bias. There's no nothing, at least in that part of it. So your child needs to have taken a simulated test by now, and you should be working on how to pace yourself as well. So not only about that strategic advantage I talked about before, about strengthening your strengths and strengthening your weaknesses, figuring out how to pace things as well. You have about a minute to answer each question, and then the extra time is really for reading the passages. And if you find you're spending too much time in a question, put a question mark next to it and skip it. Because if you spend 10 minutes on a question, that could give you a point, but you could have answered 9 other questions and maybe gotten 8 of them right and gotten 8 more points, or 8 times whatever the scaling factor is. So these are considerations you have to think about. And there's other pacing concerns here too. That if you had spent the time practicing right, especially going to a tutor, because we have the insights and we know how the test works. We think like a test writer works. And we can understand the mentality of approaching a test from a different thing. Because there's the subject matter, in this case ELA and math, and then there's actually taking a test strategically. That's completely different. Like how to rule out a bad answer. The ELA keeps asking for the best answer. How do we do that? Same with the math. If you're if you're not 100% sure how to solve a problem in the multiple choice problems, you can probably still figure out a way to get it correct. There's strategies and techniques and just ways to do that. Okay, so all right, that's all I want to say now. I'm dying. I'm coming out of a cold and I'm about to have a coughing fit. So I wrote down a few things here, just make sure I cover them. Yeah, I did. So again, I'm Greg. My email is GregsTutoringNYC@gmail.com. I've been tutoring for a few decades now. I mainly tutor elementary school age children from grade 3 to 8, but I also do from pre-K all the way up through high school. I select who I want to tutor. That sounds odd, but I like to make sure I can get a passionate family and a passionate student who's really interested in that. I just don't want to give answers. I like to sit down with the student, crawl into their head, and figure out what they're thinking. That said, I do homework and projects and things like that with people, including not just English and math, but also in other subjects, improving your reading skills, improving your writing skills, talking about how some science things works. If you have a special project that you're supposed to do in a couple of weeks, sometimes that throws a lot of kids off. I can work with you on that. As well as I also advocate for children, so if your child has a disability or a medical issue, I can work with you to make sure that the principal or the school or the district or the Department of Education are obliging and honoring that, because they should. In any event, generally speaking, I also specialize, depending on the time of the school year, in the New York City state tests, so grade 3 to 8. I also specialize in the New York City specialized high schools and other specialized high school tests. For instance, there's the TACHS, the TACHS for getting into Catholic schools, as well as the SHSAT. I also work with students about getting into gifted and talented, including Mark Twain, Bay Academy. There's a plethora of them. That's a process by itself, including younger children who might be nervous to take the test, and things like that. We can introduce that into the child without them having to be an adult in the process. A child's still a child, and they should be learning things spatially and topologically and things like that. In addition to, we don't want them sitting down with worksheets and so on. So, and that kind of a thing. I also tutored kids in New Jersey as well, in Long Island and Westchester, and things like that. So there's vocational schools in New Jersey. There's some specialized schools like the Bergen County Academies is some of the main ones where I tutor for that. And once in a while I also teach for the SAT and the ISEE and the GED and other kind of tests like that. Okay, I hope everybody has a nice day. I hope you'll be able to print out your tickets and that your SHSAT process goes real smoothly. And not only do you do well in the test, but you have a lot of fun. I like to say not only good luck, but good skill, because you've practiced and you've rehearsed and you've been a disciplined learner, and that counts. All right, everybody, peace out. Hopefully everybody has a nice day.